There are moments in life when joy arrives like the first ray of sunlight after the longest winter, warm and golden and achingly beautiful. Sometimes that light comes just as the storm clouds are gathering, and sometimes it comes 1 second, before everything changes forever. Sarah Chen had forgotten how to smile. Not the polite curve of lips she'd perfected for family dinners, or the forced brightness she wore to work meetings. She'd forgotten the kind of smile that starts from somewhere deep inside your chest and spreads across your face like sunrise over still water. The kind that makes your eyes crinkle and your whole body feel lighter, as if gravity itself has decided to give you a break. For 28 years, Sarah had been the daughter who never disappointed, the employee who never complained, the girlfriend who never asked for too much. She'd built her life like a carefully constructed house of cards, each decision balanced perfectly on the one before it. Graduate summa cum laude. Check. Land the prestigious job at the consulting firm. Check. Move to the expensive apartment in the right neighborhood. Check. Date the successful lawyer her parents approved of. Check. But somewhere between checking all the right boxes and becoming the person everyone expected her to be, Sarah had lost herself. The girl who used to dance in her bedroom to music only she could hear had been replaced by a woman who scheduled her spontaneity and color-coordinated her dreams. The transformation had been so gradual, so seamless, that she hadn't noticed the exact moment when living became surviving. The anxiety had crept in like fog, dense and suffocating. Every morning felt like putting on armor that grew heavier with each passing day. The panic attacks started small, a tightness in her chest during client presentations, a flutter of dread when her phone rang. But they grew stronger, more frequent, until even the simple act of ordering coffee felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Her therapist, Dr. Martinez, had been patient, kind, understanding. They talked about perfectionism and people-pleasing, about the weight of expectations and the courage it takes to disappoint others in order to save yourself. But words, no matter how wise, couldn't fill the hollow space that had opened up inside Sarah's chest. She felt like she was watching her life through bulletproof glass. She could see it, but she couldn't touch it, couldn't feel it, couldn't make it real. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in October. Sarah stood in her marble-countered kitchen, holding her third cup of coffee, staring at her reflection in the chrome surface of her refrigerator. The woman looking back at her was successful, put together, and completely empty. That's when she made the decision that would change everything. She would drive to the coast, to the lighthouse she'd visited as a child with her grandmother. She would sit by the ocean and remember who she used to be before the world taught her who she should become. The drive from Chicago to the shores of Lake Michigan took 2 hours, but it felt like traveling through time. With each mile, Sarah felt layers of expectation peeling away. She turned off her phone, ignored the emails piling up, let the outside world fade into the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, she was moving toward something instead of running from it. The lighthouse stood exactly as she remembered it, weathered white stone against the endless blue of lake and sky. Sarah climbed the winding path she'd run up as a 6-year-old, her grandmother's laughter echoing in the autumn wind. At the top, she sat on the same wooden bench where her grandmother used to tell her stories about brave ships and distant shores. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the water in shades of gold and amber. Sarah watched the waves roll endlessly toward the shore, each one unique, each one returning to the vast body from which it came. For the first time in months, her breathing came easy. The tight knot in her chest began to loosen. She thought about her grandmother's hands, soft and lined with age, always warm, always steady. She remembered the stories about following your heart even when it leads you somewhere scary, about how the bravest thing you can do is be yourself in a world that's constantly trying to make you someone else. Her grandmother had lived by those words, had married for love instead of security, had painted watercolors instead of pursuing the practical career her parents wanted. As the sun touched the water, Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. It started as a flutter, like a bird testing its wings. Then it grew stronger, warmer, spreading through her body like honey through tea. Her lips began to curve upward, not the practiced smile she'd worn like a mask, but something real and spontaneous and utterly her own. The smile started in her eyes, a genuine crinkle of joy that she hadn't felt since childhood. It spread across her face slowly, naturally, like a flower opening to the sun. Her shoulders relaxed, her breathing deepened. For one perfect, crystalline moment, Sarah remembered what it felt like to be alive, to be present, to be herself without apology or explanation. The smile was still spreading across her face when she heard the screech of tires on the road below. The newspapers would later report that Sarah Chen, 28, a promising consultant from Chicago, had died instantly when a distracted driver ran a red light 3 blocks from Lakeshore Drive. She had been returning from what witnesses described as a peaceful afternoon at the lighthouse, her car found, parked legally in the visitor's lot with a thermos of tea still warm on the passenger seat. What the newspapers couldn't capture was the expression found on Sarah's face. A smile so genuine, so radiant, that it moved the first responders to silence. The EMT, who would never forget her, described it later as the kind of smile that made you believe in something larger than yourself, even in the midst of tragedy. Dr. Martinez heard about the accident on the evening news. Through her tears, she recognized something profound in the final photograph the media had obtained: Sarah at the lighthouse, captured by a tourist's camera just hours before. In that image, she saw not the anxious, tightly controlled woman who had sat in her office every Tuesday for 6 months, but someone transformed. Someone who had finally found her way back to herself, even if only for a moment. Sarah's parents struggled to understand their daughter's final day. Why had she driven to the lighthouse? Why hadn't she answered their calls? But when they cleaned out her apartment, they found something that began to make sense of it all. A journal entry dated that very morning. In her careful handwriting, Sarah had written, "I need to remember who I was before I became who I thought I should be. Grandma always said the lighthouse was where lost things found their way home." Her coworkers remembered the woman who never missed a deadline, never complained about overtime, never caused any trouble. But they also began to remember smaller things. How she'd always volunteered to help new employees. How she'd quietly covered for colleagues going through difficult times. How she'd sometimes stare out the conference room window with a longing they now recognized as grief for a life unlived. The tragedy rippled outward in ways both heartbreaking and beautiful. Sarah's story became a whispered reminder in the halls of her consulting firm about the importance of checking on each other. Really checking. Dr. Martinez began incorporating Sarah's story, with permission from her family, into her work, with other clients trapped in the amber of other people's expectations. But perhaps the most profound impact was on a young photographer named Marcus, who had been at the lighthouse that day, capturing the sunset for his portfolio. He had taken several shots of the woman on the bench, not intrusively, but as part of the landscape, part of the scene's natural beauty. When he developed the photos later and heard about the accident, he saw something that took his breath away. In frame after frame, he watched Sarah's transformation in real time. From sadness to peace to joy to that final, radiant smile. Marcus never sold those photographs. Instead, he printed one, the moment of the smile, and kept it on his desk as a reminder that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply be present for your own life, even if only for a moment. Especially if only for a moment. Sarah's story reminds us that authentic joy doesn't require perfect circumstances or guaranteed tomorrows. Sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is give ourselves permission to feel genuine happiness, even when, especially when, we don't know what comes next. If you found meaning in Sarah's story, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, your authentic smile, your real joy, your truest self. They matter more than you know, and they're needed more than you realize. What would you do if you remembered right now who you were before the world told you who you should be?